Okay, so NSW has reopened its migration program a couple of weeks ago. It has also released skill lists for the 190 and 491. This means that NSW has moved back to the paradigm where it had its own skill list and it invites people in certain occupations. For the last financial year, NSW was inviting people as long as their occupation was listed in either the 190 or the 491 on the federal skilled occupation list, they were inviting people as well. That has now changed. The new lists are in the description. Largely, they are both the same, the lists, in terms of the occupations they contain. There are only a few differences, such as nurse managers and psychiatrists are on the 190, for instance. For the 491, you have mixed crop farmers and livestock farmers who are not on the 190. So there are slight changes, which is why I'd recommend you go check out those lists. A lot of occupations that were previously eligible, though, are not eligible anymore simply because NSW has defined the occupations on its own merit rather than following the federal level lists that exist. Now, NSW has also described priority sectors that they would be inviting. These include construction, you have renewables, you have the care economy, you have digital and cyber, you have education, you have agriculture, agri-food, and advanced manufacturing. So these also include, aged care services, disability services. You also have early childhood education. You have other medical fields within this. You have social work as well. So all of the priority sectors have been defined, and the skill lists are essentially what you want to look at to see if your occupation is on there. Now, in terms of the 491, which is what this video really is about, there are three pathways for the 491. The first one is if you're employed with a regional NSW employer. In this case, you need to be employed in a closely related occupation with that regional employer. You need to be working for the last 6 months, and it needs to be the same employer. So keep that in mind. You also need to be paid a minimum of the TSMIT rate, which is the temporary skilled migration income threshold rate. So that is an income rate that has been defined by the government, and there are 10% concessions on certain occupations. Again, there's a list for this that exists, linked in the description. You can check it out. Second pathway is if you're invited by Investment NSW. I'm not going to talk about that because it requires an invitation from Investment NSW, and as the name says, it's an investment pathway. The third pathway is if you graduated from a regional institution in NSW. In this case, your study should be closely related to your occupation, and you should have graduated within the last 2 years. So you need to be a relatively recent graduate. If you graduated 3 or 4 years ago, you wouldn't be eligible for this pathway, unfortunately. Another thing worth noting is that NSW has increased its fees. Now the application fees to $315 plus GST, that's Australian dollars. So keep that in mind when looking at this process. So from this information, we can conclude that NSW is prioritizing two types of people. The first is people who are employed in a priority occupation. These have already been defined. Again, refer to the skill list to see if your occupation is on there. And the second type of people that NSW is prioritizing is people who have either graduated from a regional university or who are working for a regional employer. So it's essentially giving importance to people who have devoted time and effort and showed commitment towards regional NSW.